Ethiopia much sought access to the Red Sea. Mogadishu says it's an act of aggression and violation of its sovereignty. So how will this dispute play out, and is war a possibility? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Elizabeth Puranam. A deal between Ethiopia and a breakaway region of Somalia is raising tensions in the Horn of Africa. Somalia regards Somaliland as part of its territory and has warned Ethiopia against interfering in its affairs. But Ethiopia is landlocked and wants access to the sea, something Somaliland can provide. Regional blocs are trying to mediate, but neither side is willing to back down. We'll go to our panel in a moment, but first, Fintan Monaghan has this report.
Fury in Somalia over a deal between Ethiopia and Somaliland. Somalia regards Somaliland as a breakaway part of its own territory, and the government is accusing Ethiopia of interference and aggression.
No one has the power to give away a piece of Somalia. Our grandfather refused, our forefathers refused, and our mothers refused. We ourselves refused to give our land, and it is not possible. Somali people will never accept it.
Somaliland declared independence from Somalia in 1991. That hasn't been internationally recognized, and Somalia continues to claim the territory. But Somaliland has something Ethiopia needs: access to the Red Sea. The agreement signed in early January will allow Ethiopia to lease a portion of Somaliland's coast and set up a commercial port and a naval base.
This will be the starting point for our cooperation with the brotherly people of Somaliland to grow and develop together in cooperation and to ensure our common security. As we've repeatedly stated, we do not wish to use force on anyone, rather we'll use what we have cooperatively.
As for Somaliland, it's hoping the deal will lead to official recognition by Ethiopia.
We are very happy, and we thank the Ethiopian Prime Minister as we sign the agreement here. We will allow them 20 kilometers of our sea, and they will also recognize us as an independent state. They will become the first state to recognize Somaliland.
Regional neighbors have called for calm, with some attempting to mediate in the dispute. But Somalia says there can be no talks until the deal is cancelled. No side has shown any willingness to back down, and tensions are growing. And if the agreement between Ethiopia and Somaliland is put into practice, many fear they will get a lot worse. Vincent Monaghan, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
Let's bring in our guests. In Jijjiga, Ethiopia, is Kemal Hashi Mohamud, a member of the Ethiopian Parliament. In Nairobi, Matt Bryden, a strategic advisor at Sahan Research, that's a political think tank covering the Horn of Africa. And in Kampala is Abdi Ayente, former Somali Minister of Planning, Investment and Economic Development. He's also the co-founder of the Heritage Institute for Policy Studies think tank in Somalia. A very warm welcome to all of you. Mr. Mohamud, I'll start with you in Jijjiga. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed says that landlocked countries such as Ethiopia face insurmountable challenges. But why go to Somaliland to address that when it is sure to trigger a dispute?
Bismillah. Well, thanks. So I think the Prime Minister's call was not specific to Somaliland only. It's obvious that this great nation needs direct access to the sea, and for this, the Prime Minister or the government he's leading had a call to all neighboring countries, officially and also through diplomatic means. And luckily, Somaliland was the first to respond. That's how it happened to approach Somaliland. Other than that, there wasn't a specific interest to Somaliland, and this is a very positive move and for mutual benefit, as it's already supported and promoted by the African Union to enforce and strengthen regional integration for both, economic and social interests, which benefits all parties. And speaking of Somaliland, like the other neighboring countries, we share not only borders, but we share also the same community who lives here and there, and this would be a great benefit for both people living in Ethiopia and in Somaliland. So that's it. But there wasn't a specific interest to Somaliland. But we are very thankful that Somaliland has become the first to understand this and also to respond positively. We also hope that other neighboring countries will also respond. So we are okay that we have also access to other places, to the ports and to the sea. So I would say it's only an opportunity open to all neighboring countries. So it wasn't specific. And we don't see any reason of instigating any conflict or not. It's a very positive move.
But of course, given that Somaliland is not recognized as a country by any other nation in the world, this is why the move has received a lot of condemnation from many different organizations. Mr. Ayente, what do you make of what you're hearing? Did Ethiopia come to, say, Somalia, which has the longest coast in Africa, the longest coastline, as one of the countries in the regions that could provide it with the access to ports that it so desperately needs?
I think facts are very important here. Somalia, like all the other neighboring countries to Ethiopia, has been willing to engage with Ethiopia on a mutually beneficial trading arrangement, including the use of its ports. That has never been a problem. The second fact that's critical here is that Ethiopia actually made itself a landlocked country 30 years ago in 1993 when Eritrea gained independence. And the third extremely important fact and context to this debate is that Ethiopia's economy, in fact, grew exponentially bigger after it became a landlocked country. And that's also true for other landlocked countries in Africa, like Botswana. So the notion that you're impacted economically by lack of access to the sea has absolutely no grounds.
Okay, let me bring in Matt Bryden in Nairobi. As I mentioned, there has been a lot of condemnation. Somalia said that this would amount to illegally occupying parts of the country. The Arab League has called it a violation of international law. Is it?
Well, it's certainly a violation of international norms and standards. I mean, the unity and territorial integrity of states is something that the African Union, the United Nations, consider to be, in principle, sacrosanct. But that doesn't mean that there have not been new countries. In fact, many new countries have emerged since the end of the Cold War in 1989 and 90. So the recognition of new states is also something fairly common. And although it's a difficult process, it's certainly a controversial one, Somaliland it has been de facto an autonomous polity since 1991, so 33 years, which is longer than it was united with Somalia. It was an independent state before it united with Somalia. And Somaliland as well has a stronger case for independence legally and politically speaking than countries like Eritrea and South Sudan that have been recognized by the African Union and the United Nations. So it's not completely beyond the pale that Somaliland could be seeking independence and recognition, but it doesn't have the consent of the metropole, of the parent country, as it were, Somalia and Mogadishu. And so for that reason, I think we're seeing a very high level of controversy and elevated tempers and rhetoric on all sides of this issue.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point there. Let me put that to Mr. Mohammed. Is Ethiopia willing to, the wording isn't very clear, but is Ethiopia willing to recognize Somaliland as a sovereign nation in return for access to this port?
Let's face the fact. With or without access to the port, the demand to be independent by Somaliland has been a long-standing question. It has been almost now more than 3 decades since Somaliland has been leading itself by its own. And long before ago, during the colony, as soon as Somaliland was independent from colony, you know that it has been recognized by more than 30 countries. And after it joined the union, again, it just took its own choice of standing alone with see the stability within the whole Somalia. So now it's in the process of calling for independence. And I see that there's a lot of strong grounds for Ethiopia and for many other countries to recognize Somaliland. So Somaliland has a great opportunity of being recognized.
Okay,
And this goes on through the process.
Okay, it sounds like you're saying that Ethiopia would recognize Somaliland as an independent nation. Mr. Ayante, we've heard from various senior advisors to the Somali government saying that they are prepared to go to war over this issue. Can Somalia really afford a conflict with a country like Ethiopia that spends 3 times as much on its military?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to say here that, in fact, Ethiopia is the aggressor, not Somalia. Somalia is simply trying to defend its sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity, under which it has every right to defend so by all means possible. And as the Somali leadership have said repeatedly, their first choice is certainly not a military choice. It is diplomatic choice. It is to try and seek a way.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Ayante, but because you are speaking about a diplomatic choice, the Somali government has also said that they do not want mediation when others have offered to mediate, that what they need is for this memorandum of understanding between Ethiopia and Somaliland to be null and void.
Well, that's correct. And that is because if someone comes to your house and claims parts of it, you won't negotiate a way out of that. You will kick them out of your house first, and then you will talk about why they did this in the first place. So I think that's an important element here. And also another key element to add to this discussion is that what Ethiopia is seeking is not only a commercial port. They made it very clear that they want a naval base in that territory. That is not only an annexation of part of Somalia, but it is actually an occupation, an intent to occupy another country. And let's remember that Ethiopia did that 15 years ago with disastrous consequences. We have al-Shabaab precisely because Ethiopia did that 15 years ago. And they're trying to repeat the same mistake again, this time with probably greater consequences.
And I do want to talk about what all of these tensions could mean for al-Shabaab in Somalia, for the fight against al-Shabaab. But Mr. Mohammed, if I can come to you with a point that Abdi Ayente was making.